Please welcome Dawn, Frank, and Chris. Okay, all right, so we've got a series of questions, and then just like Vijay did, we'll turn it over to the audience in a little bit, but it would be great if each of you took the opportunity to talk a little bit about your role and your company, and where your business is in terms of this journey from legacy to edge. So Dawn, we'll start with you.
Sure. So I'm Dawn Behnke. I work for Pacific Life Insurance Company, and I currently lead our life insurance business unit within Pacific Life. We have 5 business units today. We are in the process of integrating 2 of our business units. We are integrating our retail businesses, which is the life insurance that I lead today, along with our retirement business unit. And I will lead that combined business unit in January. In terms of our company, we are a mutual company. We are owned, and our stakeholders are our members, which are the people who own our life insurance and annuity products. We have just under 1 million members, and we have $1.2 trillion of life insurance in force. And about 5 years ago, we started our strategy to transform ourselves into a digital company. So we're 154 plus years old. And life insurance is definitely not a leading edge digital industry, and our company was no different. So we started this journey. We are on that transformation journey. We're about halfway through what we endeavored to do when we started that strategy. It's changed and morphed along the way. I think today we think of about it as a journey that isn't going to end. And it's been very important to build our culture, build our people, to think about a digital transformation so that we're continually able to get towards that goal.
Okay, thank you. Frank.
Yeah, good morning, and I really appreciate the invitation to be here. I'm Frank Cassulo. I'm Chief Digital Officer for Chevron. And by way of background, I've been in the business for 20 years up until a call about 2 years ago. I was very happy leading the Canadian business unit in Calgary and to be the first Chief Digital Officer for the company. And so as that discussion unfolded, we really talked about how we're reinventing the company, really the integration of business and IT into the digital model. So the journey began. We'd been on a digital journey for some time, but we wanted to bring together an enterprise model. We consolidated 40 business units that were largely operating independently into an enterprise model to be able to kind of think about how to transform our company from the ability to execute at speed, to scale solutions, and to really advance the digital ecosystem. We had created so much complexity in our old model that it was just time to really have to make that shift fully. So I've been leading kind of that effort for the last 2 years. In April of this year, we finally consolidated our last business unit, and now in the world of trying to optimize and refine and run an ecosystem that really helps Chevron advance its business ambition. So it's a business-driven construct, integrating almost 400 product owners into our mix from the business and really helping drive that forward. So it's been a challenge, and I look forward to talking about some of those challenges today. That's our ambition, though.
All right, great, thank you. And Chris?
Yeah, Chris Nardecchia, Rockwell Automation, and as I described last night, Rockwell Automation is a pure play industrial automation information management kind of company. We're focused on what our strategy is called bringing the connected enterprise to life, which is all about IT and OT convergence. So bringing those 2 technologies together. So about 3 years ago, we started on our transformation journey. And I think there's a little bit of context that has said, historically, Rockwell Automation's been a B2B company. We made really highly engineered, innovative hardware products with embedded firmware, and we sold them through a distribution channel. So it was basically a catalog company to a distributor channel. So our digital transformation is focused on really 3 things. It's number 1, reinventing our definition of the product. So moving from this hardware-centric kind of SKU catalog-based to outcomes and experiences, and building a platform ecosystem around that, which is a very different kind of experience. Number 2 is reimagining the customer experience. Again, we are an innovative company, very engineering oriented, where we design highly engineered products, make them, market them, and sell them. And now we're moving much more towards customer informed, telemetry informed, feature formed in what our product offerings is. And then the third is kind of redefining our business model. It used to be B2B, now it's B2B2C. It's B2C, and within that, annual recurring revenue and subscriptions become a different kind of motion in how we go to market. So
yeah, one of the things that's really interesting when you talk to companies going through this type of transformation is how much the B2B, B2C, B2B2C question comes up about what's the future look like and what are these new channel strategies.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest challenges you see with established companies is driving this transformational change, and how do we manage still delivering on the short-term financial commitments and earnings that we have while looking at these longer term, kind of big arc things that we have to deliver on if we're going to stay relevant. How is your companies managing that balancing act? Frank, let's start with you on this one.
Yeah, that's a very pointed question. I mean, each and every day our mission is to deliver safe, reliable, affordable, ever cleaner products, and we have to do that. That's our mission. But we're balancing it today in a world that we're thinking about the energy transition, which in this case, the cycles are much longer. How do you build a hydrogen value chain? How do you build a business around carbon capture and underground storage? So there's a lot of trade-offs in our business. Fortunately, our investment cycles are 20 plus years. So we're accustomed to thinking about investing in technology and taking on some of those most significant challenges. But in this role where it's a full, and just back to the IT piece and the delivery piece, it's a full DevOps model. So I have to run and maintain, modernize, and innovate all within a capacity-constrained world. So those trade-offs there's a lot of tension in the system between the needs of today and tomorrow. And so helping us think about strategy is probably the most important discussions that I have. What are our beliefs, what are our convictions as a company to help shape investments? Sometimes it's easier to work on exactly what we know we're doing today with tangible return on investment dollars versus the future in terms of where we're going. So it's about strategy, and that's the integration of thinking about how digital can enable both the base and the future. But it's a challenge and one that we struggle with each and every day.
Right, because it sometimes pits the right brain and left brain against each other and how to think about it. Yeah. Chris, how about for you?
Yeah, I think this is one of the most challenging kind of conversations internally with a legacy company, right? You're not starting a brand new startup. You're not going to be digitally native. So how do you create the burning platform to change, right? Your revenues are coming, the big portion of your revenues are still coming from the legacy products. They might be growing at a slower rate than your new products or where you're going. And when tough times come, people tend to go, kind of go into their shell and be conservative. So I think you have to keep the agenda of, where's the strategy going long term? What's the burning platform? So, some of the things we did is we created a burning platform. We made commitments on growth rates in subscription-based services over time. We communicated those to Wall Street, and that kind of puts the bar out there to create that sense of urgency. And I think, during the pandemic, there was this tendency to want to pull back. We made a conscious decision that we were going to double down and come out of it strong. We'll see how this latest, dip, impacts things. But, I think you have to keep that momentum going and keep a sense of urgency, and creating burning platforms is usually a good way to do that.
I'm sure all of you use the word burning platform and think burning platforms almost every day as you're getting ready to take on the challenge. Don, how about for you?
Yeah, so I'll just pick up on that thread there. And one of the things that we have introduced that has really helped our entire employee base get their head around how do you balance, transform, and perform. And that's what we call it. And it's that burning platform. But we found that you can't just have senior leaders decide that. You really need everyone thinking about that. And so one of the tools that we've introduced, it's very simple. It's called the even over exercise. And so you ask these questions, would you do this even over doing that? And of course, you're trading off two very good things. And there are people on both sides of that both things are good. And so it really gets you down into deep conversations about, I will spend money on this transformative thing that won't pay off maybe in the next 5 years, even over getting a new product to market that we need to have out, in 6 months. So there is no real easy answer to that, but that's a tool that we have started to really try to implement in our company and really help train our whole employee base to help make those decisions and drive out what's really important.
Okay. Frank, you used the term ROI. You all talked a little bit about kind of trade-offs. Talk to us about how you're assessing ROI on kind of digital investments, but also put it in the context of, is this core and we want to do this in-house, or are we willing to let a third party kind of get us up and running on this, right? Because those are some of the trade-offs about figuring out what's core that we need to have internal capability for versus what we reach out to the marketplace, to get us off the starting line. So, Chris, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, in terms of ROI, sometimes it's really hard for where you're going to put the ROI on it. And the approach we took was, a belief that a bigger portion of our business, we could see the data that says, hey, our software business, our services business, our software as a service business is growing at high double or triple digit rate. So we know that that's where the future's going, where our legacy products are growing, low single digits, right? So we know we have to invest in that. So that's the way we look at it, and we can forecast out, hey, if we want to be at this period, what's the CAGR, the compounded annual growth rate for that area, and kind of look at it that way. And then, we kind of back that into not saying, well, you're going to have to wait 3 years before you get that. We've taken an agile approach where we've created integrated business objectives on short-term kind of deliverables on a quarterly basis, and we report and measure ourselves against that. So we have metrics that are built into our annual operating objectives, our OKRs, if you will, into the leadership objectives, and we measure against that. And that's the way that we kind of measure progress towards this journey. And then over time, over a period of time of a year, 2 years, 3 years, then we look at those hard metrics of how the revenue is growing and what that ROI is. So,
and how about making the decision about, we're going to build an internal team for this, we're going to work with a third-party partner on this?
Yeah, so the approach we've taken is, yes, there's certain things that we think over time that we have to have the core capability in, bringing in software talent, bringing in the AI talent. So we've had a concerted push there. And the approach we've taken is we bring expertise in for a short period of time and teach people how to fish, right? And so to get things going, but then at the same time doing internal training and external recruiting to bring those kind of new skills into the organization. That's the approach we've taken.
Okay, great. Dawn, how about
Yeah, so I think, as Frank was mentioning, getting an ROI on a particular project is really, really difficult. And you can massage the numbers, and so many things have to happen in your assumptions to get the ROI that you might expect. So you might do something or not do something else based on a business case that doesn't really ever pan out. So I think it really is about getting that North Star about what you think you can accomplish, but it is about, how do you think this will help us grow? How can you do it most effectively, most efficiently? And then that translates into your ROI, which I think you do have to look at on a much aggregated basis, not on an individual initiative. So into that decision comes, what are we going to do in-house? What are we going to buy? And that really, it goes back to where do we see as our intellectual capital, our intellectual property? And for us, a lot of that's around our underwriting process. How do you underwrite your products? How do you design your product? How do you put the features into the product? And so that we do that ourselves. When it comes to how do we market, how do we go to market, some of those tools we procure, we partner, and so it really it's along that spectrum of what is proprietary. A lot of our technology we partner because it is just too hard, too expensive, too long to have that expertise and to build that all yourselves. So the pieces that we build are those that interact with the customer, interact with our employees who design.
I'm glad you mentioned too long too, because that is a real issue for business, right? There's a window of opportunity where you can create a competitive advantage. If you can't hit that window, then the chances of really getting a return and the impact you have is diminished. Frank, how about for Chevron?
Yeah, for ROI, if I look back, our early digital journey was very driven to make visible the digital value component. We went business unit by business unit and had scorecards around digital value. My first kind of mission was our CIO discussion was, you're going to deliver the message to the enterprise that we're not going to track digital value. And so we're going to track business value. So we made that step. And we got alignment around it. It's not easy because we continue to ask, what's the value of digital? And we go back to that's the value that we're delivering to the business. Because digital value alone drives the wrong behaviors in the company. We have to be driven by business outcomes. And so our prioritization process is around business value and the return on that value. And the decisions around prioritization are made by business leaders leading large delivery platforms with customer groups that are advisory teams from the business. So it makes my job easy because the business is prioritizing how we deliver digital capabilities. The second part of the question was really interesting. It's one that for us, it's very important. As Don said, we think about, do we build, buy, or partner? And it's a real strategic question that we have. If we think about build, it goes to what capabilities are differentiating in our business. What can really be a separating factor or differentiating factor as we think about our company. And so we do have a lot of investment in our own proprietary development of software and capabilities and technology. Buying, it's today's world with the cloud environment, large platforms makes a lot of sense to partner with an SAP or a Workday. We partner heavily with Microsoft. Those are our underlying platforms. And then the partnering is really, I think, interesting and really important to the future of a legacy company. We have a very public partnership with Microsoft and Schlumberger to reinvent how we explore, how we develop, how we drill wells. It's a whole suite of tools that are industry leading, but it takes the best intellect of Chevron, Microsoft, and Schlumberger to do that. And we're doing it in a way that each of us brings talents to the table in a very aligned manner, and we each see the vested interest in wanting to be successful in building that platform. And it's also a platform that we think there's a lot of opportunities to broaden across the industry because we're not just building discrete capabilities that are unique to us. So I really value our partnerships, and if I think forward about energy transition, I think it's the intersection of a legacy company that has skills and capabilities with the technology sector, with the largest companies in the world that have the wherewithal to bring that capability, because the energy transition space is all about speed, rate of change, and that coupling is, I think, one of the key enablers to unlocking it. So those partnerships become very important, both for how we operate today, but also the future.
Yeah, I found it in my industry experiences, there's a very different way of thinking about build by partner if you're talking about incremental innovation to your organization versus when it's a disruptive play, right? Because in some of it's like, how does this fit into what we do versus how does this fit into what we're going to be tomorrow? It's a very, very different kind of framework for having that conversation. Which leads me into the next question. And this is probably my favorite question that we've created for you, which is, there's a lot of change, there's a lot of innovation. There's strategies about let innovation happen at the edge. Innovation framework set from the center. How have your companies chosen to approach the centralization versus decentralization of these transitions? Don, we're gonna let you go first on this one.
Okay, so I mentioned that we are integrating 2 of our business units that go to market. And in addition to integrating those business units, we are also creating what we call stronger center-led functions. And that is a big change in our strategy from a business perspective. And part of it is due to the size and the success our company has had and what we've grown to, and part of it is due to digital transformation. And so as we are on that journey, when we began our retirement solution division, we felt that it was best to separate that, let that grow on its own, bring in own technology and grow that. It has now grown extremely successfully. And so our retirement business, our life insurance business, both have grown so successfully that how do we take it to the next level? And therefore, scale becomes very important. And you layer into that the digital transformation that we're doing, and we're seeing, gosh, in both areas, we're using some of the same technology. We need to train people in the same ways. We see a new dynamic that we have to manage in talent. People don't want to do the same thing for more than a couple of years. They want to keep growing and learning, and they want that ability to rotate. And so we take all those things into consideration. We say we need to develop more center-led functions, and we call them center-led as opposed to centralized, just to help with that mindset shift of it is still the business units that are closest to the customer where the true innovation is happening and hearing what the customer wants, hearing what the customer needs. And the business units are empowered to what products are we developing, how are we getting those products to market, which distribution channels and partners are we using, what service are we providing. That's all done at the business unit level. What we are bringing into our center-led functions is a lot of technology. How are we going to make sure that we are using common frameworks, common enterprise architecture? We are choosing the similar tools that we can educate employees on. And they are, and the employees that work in those center-led functions have the ability to see their application of those capabilities across multiple business units. And so a few years from now, hopefully that's where some new innovation is really going to come from. Because people who have worked in the center, whether it be in technology or actuarial or finance, they will be able to start to stitch together connections that you don't see if you're only in one functional unit. So that's part of that strategy.
Great. Frank?
Yeah, I love this question as well. Actually, this morning had one of our thought leaders on the phone, partner, just talking about this topic. So yeah, there's a risk when we centralized or we enterprise delivery model, and we took a lot of the resourcing out of our business units and brought it to the center so that we could focus on the highest value, scalable solutions, which has a consequence in terms of innovation at the edge. So the path we're on today, it's recognized and we're working on it, is really to enable a broader set of professionals to be technologists or citizen developers. So we have a very strong citizen developer program, and we worked very hard over the last couple of years to bring the structure, the toolkits, and then work on the data, building a data marketplace that they can access and use in a way that allows them to advance with trusted, quality, verifiable type data. So I'm very excited about our innovators, the citizen developers, and now they have vehicles to scale through our platform construct. So it's working, but we had quite a bit of a reset over the last couple of years around innovation at the edge. So it's a journey that we've been on, but it's also one that's being reshaped in a way that's very different. And maybe this is a little bit on the people side, is we're building the hybrid skill sets that I think are really fundamental to the future of our business. So those citizen developers, citizen technologists have expertise, say as mechanical engineers or facility engineers, but now are becoming very astute in coding and using applications on the edge in an environment that's very different. So those blended skill sets become very important to our future ecosystem that's not meant to be reliant on centralization, but it's meant to be more broad and open type platform. So It's a good question. It's our journey. It's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
Yeah, for us, I think it's very consistent with Don and Frank here, and the way I like to think about it is it's the power of and the tyranny of or, right? So it's both, right? Where we at the beginning of our journey, we had to kind of centralize and create the top-down push. And then at the same time, we're saying we're going to give resources to each of the business units that get impacted so that they're part of it, but we coordinate and orchestrate from a central kind of entity. So engaging my peers in a digital advisory board, so they're guiding where the business value comes from, and engaging their people, but giving them the resources so they don't have to make the trade-off of this perform and transform. You're going to do both, right? We have to do both as a company. Here's extra resources that are focused on the transformation activities. And the belief is that innovation still comes from those fringes, right? And if you get too disconnected from that, in a centralized function, you're not really adding the value. So we've taken this approach of giving resources so that there's focus on it, the innovation still comes. And longer term, we believe in this view of a community of support, right? Where it's center-led, bring expertise where it's needed, but innovation still occurs, out in each of the units.
And one of the great things that a center can do that units can't is the cross-pollination opportunity, right? I mean, so many times you see from that balcony perspective, situations that are similar enough that you just want two groups to talk, right? Or you see the opportunity to create a platform that the entire enterprise can use from the innovation that's happening at the edge. Again, that's why the center has to have a role. It's a matter of what is that role.
Well, and what you find in those models is one business unit might have something, and when they're in this community, they can go help the other business unit, and the center doesn't even have to get involved. That's the ultimate, is that they're leveraging each other across, the silos that happen in large organizations, and they're delivering innovation, with almost hands off.
You've created this horizontal community of practice, right? And this kind of fabric across the organization.
The one thing I would just add on to that, the critical thing to make that really happen is the culture. And how do you, especially in a company like ours that is moving from a very decentralized model into a more centralized model, how do you make the culture come along so that you realize all of that? And so I think that's a journey in itself.
Huge challenge, and probably something we could have an entire day talking about, cultural challenges. We're going to go to the audience for your questions that you have for our panelists today. So if you raise your hand, we'll bring you a microphone and be able to ask your questions.
This might be more for Frank and Chris, but as you think about prioritization, I heard a phrase last night that kind of stuck with me, which is if you have 150 priorities, you're probably not you probably don't have high conviction on what's important. And we heard that in some of the investment themes yesterday of maybe you don't own 5,000 names, maybe you own 50 names that you have higher conviction on. When you think about transforming the organization, how do you create the focus and really understand where to apply the leverage and priority to make transformation happen versus getting consumed by too many different things going on at once? So I'd love to hear more about that. And two, I'd love to hear more about data and the data's connection to digital. And Frank, you mentioned the data marketplace, which is something that I'm very enthusiastic about.
I'll take the first one, and I'll let you take the data one. So the way, prioritization is kind of a big deal in big companies, right? So I'm a big proponent of investment planning and prioritization that's aligned to the strategy of the company. So we get really clear on what's our long-term strategy, but then what are our annual objectives, and aligning all of our work and priorities, which means that you kind of have to have your CFO with you because they're the ones handing out the dollars, and it's really easy for some executive in the company to say, I got this really important thing that we got to do. And by having an investment planning and prioritization committee, you test against, well, what strategic lever is that pulling? So that's the way we think about it. I mean, I can tell you that, when I came into the company, there was 257 projects, and now we manage things in terms of, 7 to 9 things in a year that are aligned to the strategy, and then we measure against them. So I think you do have to simplify, and you got to create laser focus and aligning them to what your strategic objectives are. I can tell you that that's not easy, and a lot of times it winds up that someone has to put their hand in their pocket of their budget and transfer it to another one, and God help you if you're in those conversations, because they're not easy.
Maybe a quick touch on the first question. I mean, we simplified our enterprise digital strategy to 3 themes: enhancing asset value, optimizing our value chains, and enhancing employee and customer experience. To give us that focus, that's a business-led strategy, but it allows us to have a check. Are we working on the highest value enterprise activities? And then we'll spend day 2 on prioritization in general. No, great. I've used the phrase in the last 6 months in particular, it's all about data. Fundamentally in our company, if we don't have the focus and rigor around data, we're rate limited on what we can do in terms of the digital enablement piece. And maybe just because I'm newer to the space, it took me a little longer to realize the focus and my mandate was more around digital enablement. And it's all about data in a way of bringing down silos, providing access to the trusted data. And really, there was a quote that, value is no longer created in functional silos, it's created at the intersection of functions. And so that's really true in our business and making sure that we have data accessible across functional boundaries that have been traditional boundaries in our company. I believe that the power of data and unlocking that is by far one of the top agenda items. Really hard to focus. The investments that we're making in data are huge, but they're not even where they need to be. And this is the trade-off of today versus tomorrow. So I have a lot of passion around data, especially in the last 6 months, because I've really seen what's possible when we get it right. And I can see what's possible in terms of when we integrate and we think about data holistically. So I love the topic, but I love hearing thoughts from others as well.
Frank, you made a remark, something along the line that you should measure business value rather than digital, right? Did Chevron go through a phase where measuring digital was important to get to the perception of business value, or should you just leap right to business value?
Yeah, we spent 4 years of our digital journey measuring business value. I led the Canadian business, and I had my P&L, my business scorecard, and I had a digital scorecard. And that scorecard went up against all the other business units. So were we driving the right behaviors when I, as a leader, was saying, how is the value in digital? Where are we driving the digital value enablement? So we started with that construct and pivoted just 2 years ago. And those scorecards no longer exist. I can't tell you the value of digital.
Do you think it's a necessary phase to go through for companies to measure digital revenue separately?
Yes, I think for legacy companies, I'll let the other panelists absolutely have to, until there's a conviction on investing in digital that goes beyond questioning the value. But if you're still getting questions around value, then naturally you have to start answering.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to call it here to keep us on schedule for this morning. But please join me in thanking our panelists for sharing their company perspectives.